Lesson 9. In Lesson 9 we're talking about rules for multiplication of signed numbers, inverse operations, and rules for division of signed numbers. Now we're going to start off by simplifying the following expressions. When we simplify these expressions, the first one is negative 4 times 2. What we're saying here when we multiply is we're saying the opposite of a positive. So the opposite of a positive must be a negative. So negative 4 times 2 is going to be equal to negative 8. It's like saying we have two negative 4's. If I have two negative 4's, negative 4 plus negative 4, that must be equal to negative 8. The next one, 3 times 2. 3 times 2, that's 6. And our next one, when we have negative 3 times negative 5, this one, what it's saying is we want the opposite of a negative. The opposite of a negative must be a positive. So, when we've got negative 3 times negative 5, we get an answer of positive 15. What we can see is when we multiply a negative times a negative, we get a positive. If we multiply a positive times a positive, we get a positive. And if we multiply a negative times a positive, we get a negative. Okay? We're going to continue with those rules looking at division as well. Negative 4 divided by positive 2. Okay? We're looking at the opposite of a positive. The opposite of a positive must be a negative. So our first answer is going to be negative 2. That's half, what we're saying is half of negative 4. And half of negative 4 is negative 2. For problem B, 6 divided by 3, that's equal to 2. A positive and a positive must be a positive. And then we've got a negative divided by a negative, so we've got the opposite of a negative, which must be a positive. So 16 divided by 2 is going to be the same thing as negative 16 divided by negative 2. That must be positive 8. Now, these rules, we need to practice them to make sure we know when our answers are negative and when our answers are positive. Lesson practice is on page 45. That was a quick lesson. But one thing we need to cover before we get there are inverse operations. Inverse operations. I'll tell you, we looked at inverse operations today. Inverse operations. They could be multiplication and division. So we could multiply and divide as one of our inverse operations. Okay, what would our other set of inverse operations be other than multiplication and division? Hopefully you said addition and subtraction. Addition and subtraction are our other set, and we just got the signs inside of those circles there to tell us what our inverse operations are. Now we'll practice this more on page 45 for our lesson practice during our next class. Hope you got all your notes done. Hope you have a good afternoon.